Everybody ready?
Yep.
Michael, Ryan, are you ready?
Yes.
And Paul is here. Okay, and so is Mike Renner. Good morning to everybody. My name is Rosa Orenstein and welcome to our meeting today. I have to say that the last time we held our meeting on February 13th was literally about a day before the big freeze hit us. And in recognition of that event, we pivoted to bring to you today two excellent speakers who have been not only members of NTREG for many, many years. I think Paul may have been right there close to the beginning, if not at the beginning. And I'm sure somebody will correct me on that, but I want to welcome everybody because we thought we would pivot, and instead of just focusing on what went wrong and who did what and who should be blamed for everything that happened, we thought we would instead focus on how do we help ourselves, how do we make ourselves more resilient, especially with renewable energy, how do we help ourselves go through the next outage, because you can bet your bottom dollar that it will come, and it may come sooner than people realize. So we thought we should pivot, and as a service to our members and the public at large, we have two excellent speakers that can tell you how that is done and be able to move forward with that. So with that short introduction, welcome. The first thing we're going to do today is to have some updates. The big freeze caused us to have to delay the voting on our elections, and Dan's going to announce that. But before I do that, Ryan, are you recording this meeting now? I just want to make sure it's being recorded. And as a disclaimer to everybody, this meeting is being recorded so that our members can take advantage of viewing it on our YouTube channel or on our website if they can't make this meeting. And so if you don't want to be part of the recording, you can excuse yourself at any time. Dan, do you want to update the membership on the results of the election?
I'll be glad to. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, first I owe everybody an apology. Just about the time I was getting ready to post the information to the website, we had somebody down the block from us installing a dog run in their backyard, and they augured down through the entire cable that feeds the neighborhood for the internet, and it took several days to get it back. Then they did it again. So yeah, it's a long story, but fiber optic cable is very small. It's about the diameter of an ordinary pencil. And when you cut that, you turn off about 500 homes in the process, and they managed to do so. Anyway, getting right to it, just as a personal reminder, if anybody still has their microphone active and you're not participating directly, please remember to mute yourself. We had several very, very good candidates for our board. Eric Pratt for secretary ran unopposed, and I will say this, Eric has been our secretary for the last 2 years and has set the bar remarkably high. Obviously, he ran unopposed, and Eric has been elected as our secretary once again. Our event coordinator, we did have two candidates. We had Gregory Isaacs and Mark Whitty, and this was surprisingly close. Mark Whitty edged out Mr. Isaacs, but Mr. Isaacs is not going to be left out. We're going to be in touch with him for other options. We did not have a program co-coordinator, if you will. Nobody held up their hand and said, I'll vote for myself. So that position is still available. Last but not least, member at large, we had one member, Eric Johnson, and Eric was elected as well. So the successful candidates Secretary, Eric Pratt. Event Coordinator, Mark Whitty. Member at Large, Eric Johnson. Co-coordinator is still open, but that will be addressed by the board. Congratulations to the new candidates, new nominees to the board, and successful electees. I will be in touch with you to get some additional information so that we can post you on the website. Rosa, that's all that I have.
Thank you, Dan. And I want to congratulate and welcome the new board members. We will be in touch with you fairly quickly because we're trying to plan our board retreat, our annual board retreat, so that we can plan out the year. And so we will be in contact with you in short order so that we can get your availability and we can plan our board retreat. We want to try to have it before the next board meeting because we are running about close to a month behind because of the big chill that and the big freeze that we all encountered. Lisa, we also generally have our membership also report and update. Lisa, could you do us the honors of updating our membership?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I'm Lisa Magel. I'm the membership coordinator. So I keep track of everybody's membership, and I don't take the money. That's the treasurer's job, but I keep track of who's currently paid. As you may know, NTREG membership is only $20 for a year of membership. And particularly when we're meeting in person, it helps us pay for things like coffee. And then, we sometimes have to pay venue expenses. Right now we're paying for Zoom. You can join or renew. On the NTREG website, we have a join/renew tab on the website, and there's a drop-down menu where you can choose an individual membership. You could also become a business member if you're in business for yourself and something related to renewables or energy efficiency. And there's also a commercial membership. Those are a little bit more expensive, but there you get to put your logo and a clickable link on our website. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, I'm aware of one renewing member this month. I want to thank Ann Whiteman for renewing. I think she renewed via Texas. You can renew, in addition to NTREG, you can also renew at the Texas Solar Energy website. And that way they have a similar join/renew tab on their website. But if you're inclined to also be a member of the Texas Solar Energy Society and the American Solar Energy Society, you can join all of those in one go if you go to the Texas website. And of course, you can also make a larger donation if you want to join at a higher level than just the individual membership. I'm not sure if I said we're holding even in NTREG at 53 paid memberships right now, and we have a couple of commercial members, that business/commercial members, and a couple of professional members. If you've got any questions about your current status, you could actually chat with me right now online, and I can look you up and see, if you're current or what month you'd need to renew. Or of course, you can send me an email anytime. So, you can send that through our website, or I'm lkmagel@sbcglobal.net. That's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lisa. I just want to chime in and say that the membership, and in particular the platform on the Groups.io, was extremely active during and after the power outages. A lot of information that a lot of our members brought forth, which I know they were very informative for me. And what this group tries to do is to bring in as much education as possible to our members and to the public at large, because we are here to provide a nonprofit service to the public at large. Next, we normally have announcements that members may make. Is there any member on the line that wishes to make an announcement of anything that's going on that they wish to let our group know about? If so, unmute yourself and speak up. Okay, nobody seems to be speaking up. Any guests, people who are on this call that are not members but have announcements that they wish to make?
Hi there, Rosa. Hi, this is Kathy Montoya.
Hi, Kathy.
And my apologies for taking so long to officially join. I did that last night in the middle of the night. So
All
Lisa,
right.
I joined new last night.
Welcome.
And Mr. Lipinski, my apologies. I keep email. I don't keep emailing you. I've emailed you a couple of times. I am going to Puerto Rico in 2 weeks. I have a little team. We're family, and I started a little nonprofit last year at the end. So we're going down, doing a little reconnaissance trip. We're going to, our goal is to go to Utuado and Adjuntas in Puerto Rico, which is where Dan and a group did work after they installed a lot of solar installations in that area in Puerto Rico. So we're just going on a fact-finding, making new connections, old connections, and coming back this year and try to build a budget and figure out how to do some grant writing, et cetera. So we're learning as we go. And my brother, who's part of the team, he just did 30 hours on the basic POV course online. So we're getting there. So I just wanted to say hello and thank you so much for everything you guys do. It's such an amazing resource, this group, and feel very fortunate to be able to get on here once a month.
Thank you, Kathy, and welcome.
Thank you.
I remember seeing you at the DFW Solar Tour, so welcome.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Larry, did you have something?
Yeah, sorry, I missed the time slot for members, but I just wanted to, I know there's a number of bills, solar and renewable energy related bills. We'll try to get an update for that, maybe for the next meeting, but I did want to, and I'll put something in the chat here briefly, that we do have with my activity with Citizens Climate Lobby, we have a environmental and economic stewardship resolution that has been introduced by Representative Anchia, and that has now been assigned to committee. So we're excited about that, but encourage members and others to shoot off an email to their state representative. And I'll put a link in the chat where people can, we have a little template, easy kind of step through. So, but I think, we might be, maybe this might be the legislative session where we see a little bit of action on climate.
Thank you, Larry. Would you also, if you don't mind, posting it through the groups IO so that the membership at large can also get it?
Yes, sure will. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Any other guests or members that have announcements they wish to make? Oh, and Larry, just so you know, we have been trying to get Representative Anchia to come and make a presentation to NTREG. We're hoping to get him here after the legislative session is over.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
There was a bill I just mentioned to see if anybody's heard of it. I just saw it kind of run through my little bill tracker about a property tax credit for local solar installed. And I didn't catch who filed that, but we'll try to get some more information on that as well. So it's different than appears to be different than the exemption, but it's actual credit on your property tax bill.
Wow, that would be great. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. Anybody from Climate Reality Project on our call today, on our meeting today, that they may want to make an announcement?
Hey, Rosa, Michael's here, but I wasn't asked to represent CRP in any way today. Is there something I do know about the discussion, you and Roger have had though, about the challenge. So I know what you mean.
Yes, well, and I just want to make sure that people know that it meets on the third Saturday of the month at 1 p.m. and it's one of the groups that we are trying to collaborate with on a more concerted basis. And so I wanted to make sure if there was anybody from CRP that wanted to make that announcement, or any other announcement that's going on with them that they wanted to share with our group today.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning the time. I mean, you know, I've been involved here and there for years, so I think it's great we collaborate together. Seems to be a lot of improved, you know, interaction between our groups, which makes total sense. So I'm glad to see it. So
Yeah,
it's great.
It's terrific. Ryan, you want to talk to us a little bit about young professionals in energy?
Yes, we were arranging a collaboration meeting, a webinar with young professionals in energy that was scheduled to happen on March 23rd for a variety of reasons related to the events last month and a lot of misinformation between the oil and gas community and the renewables community. And that the purpose of the webinar was to collaborate between a traditionally oil and gas focused org and of course NTREG, a traditionally renewables focused org. We've opted to postpone that to a later date until the dust settles around what has happened this past month, last month. So it'll still be in the works, but date to be determined.
Thank you, Ryan. And obviously we will be posting that on our website and letting the membership know so that we can have that collaborative meeting as well with the young professionals in energy. You may recall that I think it was in January, NTREG put out a call for community projects that we may want to undertake as NTREG, so that we reach out to the community and bring to bear the skills and the knowledge that our group has, separate and apart from having these monthly meetings. We thought it was time for our group to reach out into the community and help on a more hands-on basis to help solve a community project. And we had a call for project submissions, and we got 3 project submissions. One of them is from Green Careers Dallas and what they're doing in the South Dallas area. Another project that that was proposed to us came from Mark Whitty regarding creating new PowerPoint presentations and the benefits for solar outside of the presentations we have here. And we thought we would give, since Tracy spoke to us last month about her project, we thought we would give Mark Whitty a 5-minute time period for him to make his presentation to us on his proposed project for NTREG to undertake. Mark, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Would you please make your presentation?
Thank you, Rosa. I appreciate the opportunity to spend a few minutes talking to you all about this. What I would like to do is update the Solar 101 presentation that we already have and go into more detail about energy efficiency, energy conservation, community solar, electric vehicles, and even just buying renewable energy on the open market rather than people using energy from fossil fuel sources. And I'll take it upon myself to update the presentation. And when I get it into a form that is reasonably finished, I'll circulate it amongst whoever in this group would like to review it and edit it as need be. And I'll also be happy to make the presentation myself. But if anyone else would like to make the presentation to different groups, and I think more importantly, I'm looking for help in just finding groups that would like to hear the presentation.
And I don't know how we sign up for that. And I know there's a lot of groups out there that want speakers to come in and make presentations to their monthly meetings or quarterly meetings or what have you. Pardon me. But I don't know how we get on that list, but to your earlier point, Rosa, this group has a phenomenal amount of knowledge. Anyone that is involved in the group chats, it's obvious how much experience and knowledge we all have, but we need to, I think, do a better job of getting that information out to the community at large. And that's what I want to do.
Mark, to the extent that is not already obvious, one of the things we did last year was to update our website.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a link in there for either people to request that we make a presentation to them, so they can request a speaker. Now, obviously, we can do more always to reach out. For example, there's a school within the ISD that focuses on renewable energy.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the colleges, and we have been trying to interact back and forth with them. And I don't know if you know, but one of the contributions that Dallas College has made to our group, and it did it in specifically last year, was two things. One, Jimmy Hosh was our presenter for the solar mobile charger.
Mm-hmm.
So we now have that presentation, and Dallas College helped film it, edit it, get it ready, and it's a very professional looking production. The same is true with their help in editing the videos that were taken last year for the solar tour. Their video department edited and helped us put sound on the videos. They've been very helpful. So that's a collaboration we can have to also try to, as you say, get more into the community. And so I welcome the potential project there.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Anybody have questions of Mark about his idea for the community project for NTREG to undertake?
Hey, Mark, Michael Martin, great idea. I'm happy to support it however I can. I wanted to just say, maybe you're thinking, or I'll just ask, is if you make it modular, because you just expanded it into all kinds of great subject areas, and of course, we may just want to pick pieces and parts depending on the audience, right? So, which would be great if you're probably thinking of designing it that way. That's my only upfront 2 cents worth.
And I agree with you, Michael. I mean, and actually, I think we should have maybe two somewhat separate presentations, one that can be made to individuals and another that can be made to corporations or business professionals.
Hey, Mark, I think it's a great idea as well. This is Michael Fladmark.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, you made a good suggestion there as far as like modularizing it. And
Yes.
I'm thinking maybe some short 2 to 3 minute snippets on YouTube on each of the ones, and we expand our presence on YouTube as far as creating a channel for NTREG. So
That's a good idea.
yeah. So anyway.
Yes, as you all know, that's another thing we did last year, was we did get our YouTube channel as well. So we have that medium to publicize and get this information out to the public where it can be useful to them. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Mark Whitty on his proposed community project? Okay, Mark,
Hey.
thank you so very much. We appreciate
Hey,
it.
Rosa.
Oh, I'm sorry, Larry. Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry, I was cutting in and out, so I may have missed part of the comments there. But one thing I think we need to make sure of when we when we talk of those, energy efficiency and EVs and things like that, there are a number of organizations, nonprofits that kind of are dedicated to those particular items of energy efficiency, like SPEAR and the electric vehicle transportation group in Texas now. And so I think we need to, not, we should point to those groups as being kind of the place to go for that type of information. And, with our information, there's not that many other groups that talk about solar and residential solar. So in the past, that's why our Solar 101s have been about solar, because there's not that many other groups that can do that. When we open it up, which is good, we also need to make sure that we're pointing people to those groups that, that's their forte, if you will. So that would be my only comment, is that, we want to encourage people to connect with those other groups on those other areas, and then use NTREG as kind of a focal point for renewable energy or solar. That would be my only comment, is not to think that we're the experts on everything.
Yeah, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel either.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody else? And somebody, James just put up the YouTube channel for NTREG on the chat. I know we've gone a little bit longer than usual, but February brought many things that we all had to talk about. With that, thank you, Mark, again. And we're gonna go ahead and proceed to our presenters. For just as a reminder again, so that our presenters can be heard properly. If you're not speaking or directly participating in the meeting, please mute your phone so that we eliminate as much background noise as possible, and have our speakers be heard. We are more than honored and blessed to have the speakers we have today. I'm sorry. I have Mike Renner, and we have Paul Westbrook, and I just talked to them or stated them in the reverse order of their appearance. Most of you know both of these people. Paul Westbrook started his journey down resiliency and efficiency back in 1996. He was part of the DFW Solar Tour last year, as he has in years past. And his home has won many awards for its energy efficiency. As you can tell, he's also an author. What you may not know about Paul, and just as a little bit of an aside, he's a saxophone player. So he has music to carry him at times when he may not have power. Paul's home is grid connected, so his home may have suffered some of the power outages that we all suffered. But I think, as you will learn from his presentation, he came through with flying colors, unlike some of us. And by the way, we will have an opportunity after both of their presentations for those of you in the meeting to share some of your stories of the challenges that you encountered. Those might even be the subject of questions that can be posed to both Paul and Mike. Mike's journey started a little earlier. He first had an epiphany in 1986, and then he started going like gangbusters starting in 1998. Mike's home is off-grid and has been off-grid for approximately 6 years. He uses the grid as a battery backup. That's his battery backup. And Mike will tell you that he didn't even realize that the grid had gone down because of all the efficiency and renewable energy that he has on his home. We are all very proud and look up to both Paul and Mike for everything that they bring and their skills and their willingness to share with us and the public what you can do to help yourself and to help you prepare for the next power outage that is sure to come. This program was not the one that we had envisioned for March, but after what happened in February, rather than having finger pointing, blaming others, and licking our wounds and saying, woe unto me, we thought the better thing that we could all do is to prepare, to know what to do, to bring that to as many communities and as many people as possible so that we can, in fact, move this country to a better future and move Texas to a better future without all the pain and agony and loss that many of us suffered in February. Without any further ado, Paul, let me turn the screen and the mic over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me get my presentation pulled up here. Okay. I think hopefully everybody can see this. Thanks again to Rosa for suggesting we talk about solutions instead of problems. That always gets us much further and faster when we focus on solutions. So I'm going to talk about, many of you have toured my house and seen the presentations, and you know, I'm a big efficiency buff, and today I'm going to really put the equivalence of efficiency equals resilience. And after what we've all been through, I think resilience is something that's probably a little more interesting to people than it was just a month ago. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the house for those who aren't familiar or have forgotten. Then I've got some weather and power outage data. You can see what nature and mankind threw at the house. And then I'm going to talk about the passive house performance features, and then how my renewable energy systems did during the outages. And then finally, some recommendations, hopefully for everybody can glean one or two good items out of this. So kind of a quick summary wireframe diagram of the house. In black are all of the passive features. And passive features, I love passive features because you install them once, they require no energy to operate, they require little to no maintenance, they just last and last and last and serve you well. And it's a compact footprint with minimal, you know, wall and roof exposure. The windows are on the south side for passive solar. My garage is actually partially earth burned into the side of a hill. The slab perimeter is insulated. I use structural insulated panels. I've got shade over east and west windows if I have any. Reflective metal roof. The active features on the house are solar water heating, which we've had initially from 1996. An enthalpy wheel air-to-air heat exchanger for fresh air and the ground source heat pump. And then 9 years ago, we added solar electric on the roof as well. So those are the active features. And the big red up here is contrasting me from Mike, who will present after. I have a fairly small solar array because we're efficient. I have no battery storage, and we are grid connected with net metering policy. So that'll help contrast the two presentations that are going today.
Hey, Paul, can I ask you a question right there, please?
Yes, please.
Would you go back real quick? Just on your point about grid connected. So are you also, you're grid connected and you also do not have the technology to operate if the grid is down, or do you?
That's correct. When the grid goes down, I'm down, and
okay.
My solar can't produce, and I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit more. So
yeah, great, thank you, because I think everybody's psyched about the version of how I got to keep going when the grid's down. Of course, thank you.
So just a quick, passive solar orientation is a really big deal. South windows, you can block the high summer sun, and you can let the low winter sun in. You get daylight, which is pleasant. and you can reject the heat if you tune your windows properly, because the solar angle in the summer is very high overhead and the solar angle is very low in the winter. And that's why just something as simple as south facing window, proper overhang size, proper glazing can be a big benefit for you. Now, one thing that I did, this was actually my frugality, is I organized all the baths and kitchens and all in a common wall. It's a 2-story floor plan, but all of my plumbing is very compact so that I don't have to wait long for hot water to come from the tap. I didn't have to spend as much money on piping. And of course, they're all on interior walls, which kept me from having any freeze issues whatsoever. So I have a common plumbing wall. A couple other things. I mentioned the earth-burned garage, and I actually, February 1st, I had 1 year of a data logger running in my garage. I was curious as to how it fluctuated, because it's coupled to the ground and it's insulated, so it stays pretty mild. And my 1 year results were 51 degrees Fahrenheit was the lowest temperature I ever saw in the garage, and 86 was the hottest. And of course, it hadn't been subjected to the freeze, so I watched it, and it did fall to 46 degrees during the extreme cold. But I think a lot of people's homes fell to about that. So that was my unheated, unconditioned garage that abuts the house. We have a small wood stove insert in an old fireplace that has outside air intake. So I can do some combustion for heat. And the air tightness of my SIP construction is a big, big help. So let me just show you how those things come together. A typical 2,700 square foot house built in 96 would have needed about 5.5 tons of air conditioning. So my efficiency and passive features cut that number in half. And then my ground source heat pump has about double the efficiency. So that reduces my need for heating and cooling by about 75% versus a typical house. So that makes it much easier to ride through these kind of waves that we saw when the power got cut. And here's just another look at it of typical Texas house, cooling, heating, water heating, other. And my house is about 80% more efficient. So equivalent pies are very, very small for us. We produce almost all of our energy we need with renewable. So first reduce the use, and then a small solar array can cover almost all of that. So this is, I want to talk about this in a minute, because here in North Texas, we're always worried about summer, the heat in the summer, the strain on the air conditioning. And while it is true, this is a pretty interesting thing to think about when you think about the thermodynamics of heat loss and heat gain in a house. So I've drawn 2 boxes here, the summer house and the winter house, exactly the same house. In the summer, let's say you're trying to keep it 75 inside, and maybe one of the worst summer days, it's 110. The delta of temperature between the indoors and out is 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the formula for heat loss and gain, so conduction through your walls and your windows and your doors and everything, is the U factor, which is the inverse of the R factor, times the area. So those are 2 fixed. Once you build the house, those are fixed. How much wall area do I have? How many windows areas, door area? The variable is the delta temperature. And in the summer, it could be as high as 35. But when we got to 0 degrees Fahrenheit and you were trying to keep the house at 70, the delta doubled. So your heat loss through your structure was double what you normally see during the very hot summer day even. Now, summer you do get some solar direct gain and radiation, so it's not an exact, 50% worst case, doubling worst case, but it still shows that how a sharp winter cold spell can really tax our systems, and why insulation is so important. So now I'm going to cut to weather and power data, and we'll step back through what happened. So I've got a logging weather station here on site. So I pulled the month of February up here on top, and this is banding the high and the low, and the dark blue line is the average. And you can see we're having a mild February, and then the Arctic door started opening, and someone left the door open, and it just kept getting colder and colder and colder. And then finally it started warming back up, and then we had pretty mild conditions after that. So let's zoom into this area right here. We're going to start on 2/13, which was a Saturday, and then Valentine's Day, Sunday, and that night was when the roughly 3 days of intense power problems occurred. So we touched freezing on Saturday and then just kept falling. And by this time on Sunday evening is when ERCOT realized they might have a problem. And the temperature, of course, just kept plummeting to below zero. And then it finally recovered and recovered a little bit more and finally got back above freezing almost a week later. So that was what got thrown at all of us. Now, I have real-time power monitoring in the house, but of course, when the power is out and the internet connection's down, it's not very useful. What it does when it comes back up is it averages between the two known points to try to estimate. It doesn't know if it was just the internet or if I lost power. So when you see a sawtooth wave, that was a power outage. So let's look at Monday, 2:15. We went out about 1:50 in the morning and really were out until almost 10 a.m. There were a couple of brief power ons that didn't even register. So we had a pretty long period of no power here on Monday. Then Tuesday, we got to experience the joy of the rolling outage. Every 30 minutes roughly on, 30 minutes off, almost all day long, 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off, 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off. We had 23 of those. Wednesday, it stayed up overnight. And then we had the sawtooth again for most of the afternoon. And then finally for us by Wednesday night, the power stayed on. So the sawtooth, the power off. This is these spikes are the roughly 3,000 watts of my ground source heat pump coming on. And you can see even overnight on the cold night, it didn't have to run all night. It was cycling on and off. Now I switched it to high speed mode. It's a dual speed. And I switched to high speed mode so it could keep up faster because we didn't know how long it would be on or how long it would be off. And then a normal day when I went back to low speed is around 2,000 watts. And this was still a very cold Friday, but you can see it's just cycling on and off. And then it didn't even need to come on for part of the afternoon. I think we got some sun. I was getting free solar gain and then cycling a little more. So I was out of power about 25.5 hours over those 3 days. Better than some of you, worse than others, I know. So how did the house perform? Well, this one chart here, I have lots of data, but I culled it down. This is starting on Sunday, the 14th. Here are the 3 days, and they're not equidistant because, again, I was losing power and data. But the 3 days that we had the power issues, here's the outdoor temperature down here in green. There's the plunge below zero, started warming back up. My garage, here's the garage. It was over 50 degrees when we started, got down to just above 45 and then warmed back up. And here is the interior of the house. Now, I have night setback on my thermostat, so that was probably intentional cooling and then heated up the next morning. And then about the time we got to our nighttime cool is when we started losing power, but it actually heated up pretty well. The very, very cold morning, it overshot on the setback, but through intermittent power outages during the day, it actually heated back up quite well. And then here's that solar gain actually kicking me back up above 70. So you can see that we were really well insulated and performed thermally very well. So let me just pause right there for a minute and see if there's any questions before we get too far along on the weather data, the power data.
Yeah, Paul, this is Michael Fladmark. So in the early part of your presentation, you showed the winter and the summer with the solar noon and the angles of the solar noon. Is that particular, those angles are for your house?
Yes, that's for roughly 33 degrees latitude, which is, roughly where my house is. Yeah.
So depending on where you live, those angles may be a little different, but pretty much the same around the Metroplex.
Yes, they're going to be almost similar. We're all within a degree here, north and south DFW. So you're going to be within a fraction of a degree. So any of us that go outside in the winter, the sun angle is going to basically appear the same level. Now you go to Minnesota and you're talking quite a difference there.
Right, and it requires some design changes for your passive design and everything as far as the overhangs and things like that.
Exactly. There's two things when you're thinking about overhang is, are you in a really cold climate, in which case you want more sun even longer through the year, in which case you make the overhang shorter, or are you in a really hot climate and you want to trim it out even further? I have my overhangs designed so that the solstice, the equinoxes is where it starts changing. So here next week, just a week away, the sun will basically trim out of my house and not come back in until late September. So because we don't need it much anymore.
So I have two more questions, if you don't
Sure.
mind. So you mentioned that you have a logging weather station. Can you tell us what it is and how it's performed for you over time?
Yeah, I had a Davis weather monitor that was 20 years old, and it required manual serial port connection to get data and stuff. And just a little over a year ago, I got an ambient weather WS2000, and I have you can add multiple temperature sensors, and it will just cycle through those, and it stores all the data. It uploads to Weather Underground. So yeah, I think I've got a link on my webpage. Actually, you can go pull up my weather station site if you want to, as well as many dozens of others they're linked. So
Hey,
Andy,
Michael,
Do you mind adding that link, your website link, to the chat when we're done?
yeah, I'll put it up there.
Okay. And then
Michael, why don't
yeah.
we let somebody else ask a question? Larry's had his hand up for a little while.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Larry.
Larry?
Hi, Paul. This is great information around resilience that somehow we need to get to our state legislators for building code, enhancements. Has anybody contacted you, or do you have any ideas about how this could get rolled into the code development stuff going forward?
Boy, I don't, nobody's contacted me, obviously. I guess I'm not a big enough donor, so nobody's contacted me, but I'm always happy to share this information with anybody who will listen, so.
Larry's going to contact you.
Yeah, I would suggest maybe this is for whoever's kind of helping manage the recording of this, is that if we had a excerpt of Paul's presentation around the efficiency of his home, then maybe what we could do is get everybody to send if it was made as a YouTube excerpt of today's meeting, then we could get all of our volunteers to send that link to their state representatives to say, hey, why don't you reach out to Paul Westbrook and get a little bit more background on this for future code development. So anyway, I'll throw that out just as a suggestion.
Okay.
Tony, did you have a question?
Yes, Paul. It's probably in the data there, but do I interpret this correctly that over that 3-day, 72-hour period, you lost power for 25 hours? Is that correct?
Correct. Total of
For
25
about a third.
spread over 3
And I'm
days.
sure it's there in the graph, but it would be interesting to know, what times of day you lost it. I mean, did you lose it when it was coldest during the period, for example?
Yeah, really, this overnight from this first day, 1:50 in the morning to 10 a.m., that was absolutely the coldest time that we lost it.
Yeah.
And then the next day, it was cycling every 30 minutes on and off. So it was during the coldest and during the mildest. And then this one, it actually, fortunately, stayed on overnight and was the day that we kept going through the 30-minute cycles. So it was a mix of everything, actually.
Well, it's just that it stayed at 60 degrees is a great testament to the importance of passive design.
Yep.
Right there.
Insulation and infiltration. So,
yep.
All right, well, let me go on and we'll catch some more questions. So I make sure I get mine done and we get plenty of time as well for the next speaker.
And if you have questions that Paul didn't get to right now, pop them into the chat and we will make sure we take care of them at the end of the meeting as well.
Okay, so once you do the insulation, then you can see that I didn't have a lot of heating need. And then the ground source heat pump that we use, which uses shafts down into the earth, which is a fairly constant temperature, to withdraw the heat, operates very, very efficiently, even when it's cold outside. You get 10 feet down in the earth and it really didn't know what was going on at the surface. It's a constant temperature year round. So I tried to find some power data of, most people who have a heat pump in this area, it has electric resistance heating. When it gets to 35 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 degrees, 28, depending on your unit, some are even a little colder, it can't operate as a heat pump anymore. It goes to pure electric resistance heating, and you get about a 3x penalty. And what that does to the grid is when a big neighborhood's power is off, and then that block comes back on, everyone's heater comes on right away to electric resistance, which is like 2 and 3x demand, and then just strains the grid even further. So the only data I could find was from Minnesota, where they had run some tests. And just to kind of give you an idea, the heat pump is the purple lines operating as a heat pump, and this is kilowatt hours per day. And when it got really cold, this doesn't have the temperature graph, but is when the electric resistance would shoot on, and there were 100 something kilowatt hours a day just to heat because of the inefficiency of an air source heat pump not being able to operate when it gets below a certain outdoor temperature. So this ground source heat pump would run, we would get the power back on, and 15 minutes later, my heat pump would cycle off because it had already met the temperature demand and we weren't straining the grid any further. So in renewable systems, here's a not cold, sunny, nice sunny day. I'm up on my roof with my solar panels, and this is me on the roof with my solar panels, clearing them off. I have a window washing. This is a window washing pad, and there's a squeegee on. You can flip it over, and this does look dangerous, but let me tell you how I did it. I have a ladder on the side. I crawled across the roof, and then when I get here, see, my feet can hook under the panels. I can stand above them and hook under and push the snow down. So that's how I got my panels cleared.
Where's your safety belt, Paul?
This is an OSHA violation, Paul.
Yeah.
That's
Totally,
right.
turn him in.
Don't put this part on the video. But anyway, yeah, that's how I got up and got my panels cleared, got a little exercise, and at the same time. So here is my solar PV output.
I put it on a minute. You should have answered the door. I just went outside. This burrito.
Here's the
If you're not participating and speaking, would you please mute your phones? Thank you.
So here's my solar PV output of my system. You can see that the 13th was already pretty cold, but it was a fairly sunny day. And then the 14th was the day we had the snow and the heavy clouds. And then I cleared the panels that morning, and in between power outages, I was actually, producing. Again, you can see the power outages cutting in and out. And here you can see it quite clearly. It was cloudy again this day. Then it began to clear. And then finally, the wave we all like to see when we have solar is a clear, sunny, nice day of production. This is the data from my electric meter from my utility. And the yellow highlighted are the power outage periods. And you can see on this first day, we were actually sending to the grid. We were supplying power to the grid to help out. Here, where we were having the 30 on, 30 off, I would meet my demand and my ground source heat pump would kick off, and I would just start sending power back to the grid. If I zoomed in, there's a couple little out to the grids, and then the power would go off again. And that cycle repeated all day long. And I talked to my co-op and I said, is there any way to keep us solar people on during these power strains? And he said, eventually, yes. He said, the new meters, like I have when I switch to solar, they have the ability to turn off on and off individual homes. They don't have to take out an entire block or substation area. He said, but until they get those propagated through almost all of their system and set up groups, they won't be able to do it. But I hope eventually, in addition to keeping hospitals and water pumps and fire and police on, they will mark do not turn off solar homes during grid strains so that we can contribute to the solution, not be part of the problem. And you can see my export on the other days, I was really sending sending power back like crazy when it got sunny again, even though it was still very cold. So I have solar water heating, and this was kind of interesting. It's a flat plate panel on the roof and a heat exchanger and a couple of pumps that circulate and exchange the heat. And it was sunny one day, and we kept going through those power outages, and I saw my temperature rising quite rapid and the pressure rising on this loop to the roof. And at some point it'll blow my pop-off valve and I'll have to go refill it. And I did not want to do that. So I actually hooked up a small battery and inverter to those circ pumps so I could continue drawing the hot water from this loop and putting it in my storage tank. And we didn't have to use electric resistance backup at all during the power outage. We had enough hot water to carry us through for showers and cooking and dishes and everything with just the small fractional horsepower pumps moving in a loop. So that performed very well as well. So let me get to my recommendations here. And I think one, and I'll show you why this is important. Everybody's house is different. Everybody has different weaknesses. So you can put out checklists, but they don't all necessarily apply in the same order to everyone. So almost everybody can benefit from work in the attic though. Adequate insulation, ductwork that's leaking or not properly insulated are big issues I see. Obviously now everybody knows if you have water pipes in your attic, you probably want to get those well insulated. And then good ventilation in the summer is often a problem. It allows too much heat to build up. If you have to have the exit out the top and the intake under the eaves, they're equally important. Or you can tackle all of these things really with attic encapsulation. And let me show you how this works. So this home would have probably had, insulation under these plywood boards, and the roof would have just been, you'd have seen the underside of the plywood. Well, you come in and spray foam and under the roof, and you make the attic a semi-conditioned space. So in the winter, what happened during the cold is cold air was coming into your attic, freezing your pipes, and heat was getting drawn around light fixtures and cracks and crevices and rising up through and going out. If you had the encapsulated attic, then you would lose a little heat up there. But it would be very mild, and all of your equipment would be operating in a much more pleasant temperature. And it really helps in the summer because a lot of air conditioners and ducts are up there. And if you encapsulate, then that becomes semi-conditioned and your unit operates in a much nicer environment. See, this duct is not exposed to 130-degree attic temperature. It may be 88 up there or something in an encapsulated attic at the worst. So let me show you a testimonial. This was, actually I got a couple more tips. Caulking and weather stripping walls, and then simple things like maintaining your air conditioning filter. And I put a bunch of tips on my webpage at NTREG.com. There's a tips page, and it's tips for new construction and tips for existing homes. And I have a ton of links up there. So NTREG has a self-audit page if you look in the resources and the documents. So there's another place you can go and look for help. And here's a testimonial. My neighbor across the street happens to be a very qualified certified energy auditor. And a couple of years ago, one of our other neighbors down the street asked if we could come and help them improve their performance of their 40-year-old house. So we did, and here we are right in the middle of the cold wave, and a post by them on Facebook, a shout out to the owners of the company, and with assist by me, went down and executed a number of recommendations, and the house is holding its heat very well through these rolling blackouts. Thanks, guys. So they made themselves resilient a couple of years ago by attacking this, and they've saved an awful lot of money on their energy bills as well. So what could I do differently in my house? I think you saw that maybe some small battery storage to ride through short hour outages, and power my solar hot water pumps so I don't have to run out in the garage and get my little battery unit. If the battery inverter worked with solar, then I become a microgrid and I can keep producing even when I'm disconnected from the grid. And I was really excited to see that Enphase, which is the microinverters I have, the M215s, just recently announced that their battery system and inverter is backward compatible with my old inverters now. So if I were to put in their battery system and their grid disconnect, I could microgrid and I would be able to use my batteries for some power and my solar would still be operating and recharging the batteries or providing power. So that option really opened up to me very widely now, just a few months ago. And again, I mentioned I'm working with the co-op to try to leave the PV houses on so we can contribute to the solution and not be part of the problem. So finally, everybody always asks about payback, right? Nobody says, what's the payback on that granite countertop I want to install? But boy, if it's energy, what's the payback? The two least sexy things of our house provided the most value, the insulation and the air tightness. I mean, that's without question what helped us ride through. And if you really want to know the payback, I've covered this in my house presentations, but on a cash flow basis, it was 1 month. We moved into the house and we paid a little more for our mortgage payment, but we paid even less for our electric bill. And by financing the right efficiency measures, we came out ahead from the first month. So become resilient. If you're doing new whole system integrative design, can really cover a lot of these if you design well. And then for anybody's house out there, just a few key upgrades can really save you money year round. And I also have a lot of these tips in my book. And with that, I will stop sharing and pop over and make sure I can see all the chat. Cover a couple of them and then we'll move on to Mike.
Excellent book. I highly recommend it for those of you who don't own it yet.
I'll second that.
I'll third it.
Okay.
Paul,
Yeah, so
Paul,
question, let me get this question about the power outage period. Showed solar feeding to the house. The power, only when the power was on was I able to export. So, the data may not be exact because I kept losing internet connection and stuff. And so there may be things where it bridged the data, but my solar would only be on and only possibility of exporting when we had power. A question about encapsulate and radiant barrier. They're very different things. If you have a ventilated attic, then another step would be adding a radiant barrier, and that's mainly for summer. It helps in the winter too, actually. So I should say that it helps both times. Radiant barrier under the roof angle to reflect the roof heat back up, and then the ventilation air can carry that heat out. But if you encapsulate, you don't need a radiant barrier. You've moved the insulation envelope up under the roof, and now your attic is just a semi-conditioned space.
Rosa, before we lose Paul, this is Dharma. And in line with Larry's question about the coding these kinds of design features, I don't know if there's anyone from NTREG on this call. Normally you have the code needs are actually part of a city's planning and zoning process. So at NTREG, you'll probably have a lot of city representatives, either at the council level or the planning and zoning. If there's an opportunity, I think Paul should be given a chance to go make a presentation to that group, because that'll have a lot of impact, because it's going to reach out to a lot of cities. So that's something we might want to consider.
Good idea, Dharma.
Let's go ahead and switch
Yes.
over to Mike. I will type in some answers on the chat as well while Mike is talking. So we'll try to catch up there in case we have a lot of questions at the end, and then we'll have some time at the end to catch questions too. But I want to make sure we give
Great.
time for his off the grid house analogy.
That's right.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Amy-
Paul, so very much. And why don't
Amy
we
has her
switch
hand
over to
raised,
Mike?
but we'll wait for her till the end of Mike's, okay? Do you mind, Amy?
Sorry, no, that's fine. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mike and Ryan, you want to take over?
Yes.
Take it away, Mike. I am sharing my screen here.
Paul, did you stop sharing your screen? There you go.
Here we go. Over to
Well,
you,
good
Mike.
morning, everybody. I'm glad to do this presentation. I want to thank Paul. He explained very good information about energy efficiency, which is also what we're all about. So hopefully I won't have to bore you too much with all that, since he's already done a very excellent job of explaining that. A little bit of introduction to our place. This is a shot, an overhead shot of our property. We have 5 acres. The house is a 2,600 square foot house. We have a separate garage and 3 greenhouses on the property. The house that you see there in the center, we built it ourselves and back in 1998. Actually, it's still a work in process because I'm always finding improvements to make to it, trying to figure out how to make it more energy efficient and more resilience to what happened. When I first designed this house, one of the things that was going on at the time is we were in the middle of a drought and there were wildfires everywhere. And there is no public water out where we're at, and we have a well. And one of the concerns I had is during wildfires, they often get up next to telephone poles or light poles, which are soaked in creosote, and they go up in Roman candles. And the next thing you know is there's no electricity. And without electricity, I have no way to run water, which is not a good scenario if there's wildfires around. So I decided to build a house that would be energy efficient and I would have power even if the grid was down. That was my basics for designing what we did. It is a 2-story house. There's wraparound porches on the east, south, and west side. The front of the house that you're looking at is the south side of the house. So east, west, and south all are covered with a porch. Going back to where we were at, well, this is also our wind turbine, as you can see, that we installed, I think about 15 years ago. It's 100 feet up in the air to catch the most possible wind. And it's tied in with the solar and everything to keep the batteries charged. The house is constructed with cinder block, actually limestone block, which is almost twice the weight of cinder block. And the majority of them are actually filled with concrete. The blocks are insulated on the outside with regular fiberglass insulation. And on the outside of that, we use a foam board that has a radiant barrier in it. In the roof or in the attic, we use a R50 insulation with a radiant barrier on top of that. So we wanted the house to be very energy efficient, and the block has so much thermal mass that the temperature in the house stays constant, really constant. So when you have peaks, highs, and lows in temperatures outside, the inside air temperature stays really stable. Windows on the east and west side of the house have awnings on them to keep the sun out during the summertime. And they work good for most part of the day, except for when the sun is real low early in the morning or late at night. And to combat that, we have solar screens that's on the bottom parts of the windows. So the top parts of the windows are open as far as being able to let light through, which lets a lot of light through. And the bottom parts are a little bit darker during the solar screen. So with the combination of both the awnings and the solar screens, we get virtually no direct sunlight going in our east and west windows. A little bit about our heating and cooling systems. We do have a central unit. It's not a heat pump. It is just a conventional air conditioner, 2.5 ton. It is an old unit. We put it in when we built the house. Back then it was a energy efficiency of 12, which, you know, by today's standard is not very high as compared to what was back then. But we very seldom use that unit. It does have electric backup for heat, which I immediately disconnected because it's about a 13,000 watt heater, which the way we built the house, I've never had to use it. We do have heat pumps. They're small mini split systems. There's 2 of them, a 1.5 ton and a 1 ton. We also have some window units, 2 1-ton window units and a half-ton window units. So we can alter the number of units that are on along with the mini splits in order to be able to produce or use the power at the time. At night, we don't use any air conditioning or very little, maybe only have one on that's on a timer. During the daytime, we can turn up to all of them off that are totally running off of the solar and the wind, which is sometimes it gets a little hectic on doing it. It's not automated, but it's worked out really well. We can get the house down to, in the upper 60s during the middle of August when it's 110 outside with no problem and not even using any grid power, just off the solar and the wind system. So the other systems that I want to talk to you about is our heating systems. We have multiple different ways of heating the house other than with the heat pumps. We have a propane tank out here, a 500-gallon propane tank. We have one heater on the wall. It's an infrared heater. It runs off of propane. We also have a radiant floor heating system that runs off of solar. If you look at the picture of the house, the dark panels there on the white roof, those are solar water heating systems. And those will actually heat 130 gallons of water that we have stored inside in a space. And when we need it, we can run that hot water through the slab, which is, that part of the slab is insulated from the ground. And the slab also acts as a great storage for solar heat. So we do thermal storage. Along with the water heating panels, the water tanks also have electric elements in it to where we can heat the water with either the solar or the wind power. If we have excesses of that, we can do that too, to get the water up to a higher temperature. So we have multiple inputs of power. That's why this is considered a hybrid system. We just don't have one source of power. We do have grid available. We use it for backup power. The only thing that we have that's attached to the grid, believe it or not, is a battery charger. Our battery is a 48-volt battery bank. It is a 1,000-watt or 1,000 amp hour battery bank. There are 600 amp hours at the house and another 200 or 400 amp hours on a solar trailer, and these are tied together. So the solar trailer, the panels on the yard, the wind turbine, and the solar panels on the house are basically all tied together through the battery banks being connected together. Any one of them can charge either bank at the same time or separately. And it is a resilient system. Having multiple inputs like that, it saves our bacon. One time we had a lightning strike. It hit the wind turbine and it came down and went into the house and it fried our inverters in the house, but it did not touch any of the equipment in the solar trailers because it was by law, it does not have to be grounded. So I didn't think it did not find a path going through the solar trailers to ground. So we powered partially the house with the solar trailers. This was in the middle of summer several years ago until I was able to get the inverters replaced or repaired on the main inverters in the house. The house has two 6,000 watt inverters that are parallel together. They put out 240 volts split phase, just like your conventional grid power does. They all run off the batteries. The batteries are maintained by the solar panels on the house or on the trailer or by the wind turbine. So we have multiple ways of keeping the batteries charged. If we have prolonged periods without wind or without solar, I do have the option of switching on that battery charger to bring the batteries back up. We like to keep our batteries at a very high level of charge. They're old school lead acid batteries. They don't like to be discharged or left that way. So we like to keep them at a very high level of charge. And we only take out, on an average, maybe 10 or 15% of the capacity of the battery on a given cycle of each day. So that increases the longevity of our battery bank. The water heating system that we have in the house, it's a conventional water heater. I have modified it. It's a normally 240 volt water heater that has a 4,500 watt heating element in it. I've modified it to where it only runs off 120 volts. So now instead of it consuming 4,500 watts, it only consumes 1,100 watts of power. It takes the water a little bit longer to heat up. And to combat that, we wrapped the water heater with extra insulation, put a radiant barrier around it, and also put a timer on the water heater so it only comes on during the daytime when we're producing plenty of electricity with the sun. So that way our inverters can handle the water heater and everything else that's in the house without overloading the system. Our water supply is a well. Unlike most houses that they don't have to pump water, we have to pump our own water from a well, which consumes quite a bit of power. It's a 180-foot deep well. And that was my main priority for the solar system and having a grid that's disconnected from the system is I wanted to make sure that we had water all the time. We have a secondary source of water. It's a rainwater collection system. There's 5,000 gallons, 2,500 gallons behind the house that I've built a shed around to keep them from freezing. It is uninsulated or unheated, but it does have some insulation around it. And I've added some filters in there because we do use the rainwater that runs through filters and the UV filter for drinking water. And one of my concerns was for that system not to freeze during this cold weather. Let's go on to the next slides. This is what we woke up to. The next one, please. This is what we woke up to. I think it was on the 10th or the 11th. It was really cold outside. It was like 4 or 5 degrees outside. Snow was covering the solar panels. Didn't cover the wind turbine. The wind turbine, like you hear in West Texas, they froze up. And the reason they froze up is due to icing. Ice and freezing rain will stick to the blades and it will make them get heavier and they'll turn slower and slower and can cause imbalance problems. We did not have any freezing rain or ice. We just had snow, and snow is no problem with the wind turbine. The first couple of days when the front first came through, the wind turbine actually kept everything all charged up for us because we did have some pretty good north winds blowing during the first part of this storm. Also, here's a view of the house, and you can see the solar panels are all covered with snow, so they're not producing anything. The bottom panels that you see that he just showed had a little hump of snow on it. That's for the water heating system for the radiant floor heating. So let's go on to the next slide. This is the water system. That's where our water tanks are at. And this is unheated space. The one advantage that we do have is the 5,000 gallons of water that is in there does actually help to stabilize the temperature inside this room. We've never had freezing problems in there, but of course, we've never had temperatures down to -3 degrees. So I was very concerned about all this freezing up. There's pumps in there, there's pipes in there. The tanks, I don't think would have ever froze because of the massive quantity of water, but the rest of it, I think would have had a problem with freezing. So in order to combat that, one of the things I did, next slide, is, I don't know if anybody knows what this is, but this is a replacement of like a 75-watt incandescent light bulb. This is a ceramic light bulb. I put several of these down on the floor underneath where all those water filters were at. There was, I think, 4 of them. And then another one where the pump is at for the water, the pressurized water system. And then next slide, I encapsulated the whole thing. I built a temporary foam enclosure. It's hard to see on this picture, but the back behind there is where all the filters were at. And so with those ceramic heats, the heat would rise and it would maintain the temperature inside that. This is some of the foam panels that we use. And that prevented it from freezing. We didn't have any freezing problems with water, even though that was an unheated space the whole time when it got down as cold as it did. So the combination of the water storage and those little heat lamps, or well, ceramic heaters they called, they work good. The other thing we did with those foam boards is I believe in these foam boards with the radiant barrier on it. I use these things under the porch and the roof everywhere. They really reflect heat instead of trying to absorb it through insulation. At night, we can put these things in the window. During the daytime, you can take them out. And I don't know if you've ever, on a real cold day or a real cold night, put a hand on your window and put another hand on the wall and feel the difference between the temperature on the window and the temperature on the wall. And you will see where the windows are quite a bit colder than the wall is. So
Hey,
we
Mike?
put these, yes.
There's a question on the chat about where you get these ceramic heaters.
Amazon. They make them for like brooders for rabbits. Also for, I think a lot of people have like lizards and stuff to keep them warm. And they don't produce any light. They just radiate heat out. So I was looking for actually light bulbs. And normally I'd use, if you can switch back to me, incandescent light bulbs. And I had a hard time finding them. You can't find them in the stores anymore. So I went on Amazon and I found these ceramic heaters. And the nice thing about them is they don't have no elements inside of them that'll break like a light bulb. So they should last a whole long time. And the only downside is you can't visually look at them to see if they're on like a light bulb because they don't emit any light. But you can put your hand near it and you can feel the heat coming off of it. So I think those things are great. I just discovered them. And you can get them anywhere from 60, I think, up to 150 watts. They come in variable different sizes. So Amazon is where I found those. Just Google or go on Amazon and click on ceramic heaters. And they fit into any light socket. So that's where I got them at. So we put these insulation panels up on windows at night. And we have some pretty good sized windows in our front room. And I did an experiment, several years ago. And the difference between leaving them out and putting them in at night, the temperature in that room in the morning had increased by almost 10 degrees. That's how much of a efficiency that makes by putting those in at night. Because it's not so much that heat is radiating out, the cold is coming in through the windows, even though windows are very efficient windows. Just doing something like that makes a great big difference. All right, next. This is our greenhouse. This was another thing that I was very worried about freezing up. We do have a bunch of plants in there. Now, I know this thing looks like a little box. It's actually kind of deceiving. I was standing up on a ladder when I took this picture. And it's actually a 20 by 20 greenhouse. And the back side of it is 10 foot. The front side of it is 8 foot tall. And up at the very tip of it, you can see there's an array of solar panels. These are some small 100 watt solar panels. There's 5 of them. And there's a battery inside and a charger controller. And what that does is it can run lights, a fan, and actually a small 12 volt heater for some water storage that we use inside there. Next slide. This is the water storage tanks that we have in the greenhouse. They're just filled full of water. The extension cord you see, it's providing 12 volts to that one little heater. And that barrel can get up to like 60, 70 degrees. And you'd be surprised how much, even at that low of a temperature, how much help it keeps keeping the greenhouse warm. The other thing we do, I think it's in the next slide, is we put a propane heater in there, a small one. You can find those just about anywhere except for when there's an ice storm. You can't find them in the store anywhere. So I've had several of these for several years. And above it, I put a fan that runs off of that 12 volt battery to disperse the heat. Instead of the heat all going up, it radiates out, but it also goes up, and that fan disperses the heat all through the greenhouse. Now, the plant that you see in there is it's a mega tomato plant. And this was during the cold weather. you can see it was still blooming, and it's been producing tomatoes ever since last May. So I've never had a tomato plant this big before, and as much as it produces, we really love it. And I wanted to make sure it was protected, so I put heaters in there. Normally only ran one at a time. The reason there's a second one in there is because if the propane tank ran out, instead of stopping and switching out tanks, I can instantly turn on the second heater without losing much time between heaters being on. So that kept the greenhouse nice and warm, believe it or not. Next slide. Here you can see at that time, the outside temperature, it's already warmed up a little bit, was 18 degrees. The greenhouse was 50 degrees, which for a greenhouse with that little bit of a heater and with the water storage, that is pretty amazing. Now, the other thing that we did, we put foam insulating panels all around the walls of the greenhouse. That helped tremendously. And of course, the only thing that's on top of the greenhouse is polycarbonate panels, so it's not very well insulated at all. But it maintained at least around 50 degrees in that greenhouse during the coldest part of the winter storm. And I thought that was pretty amazing for a greenhouse to do that. So next. One of the things that I was trying to do is maximize our solar production during a winter storm. So in order to do that, I decided I was going to take the snow off of the panels because panels don't work too good when they're covered with snow. I did like Paul did, and we took the snow off the panels. Now you see me standing on a ladder there, but don't be scared because I'm not standing on the very top of the ladder. It's an A-frame ladder and I'm about halfway up on it. And I'm using a broom and I attached a piece of PVC pipe to it to extend it. And I broomed off all the panels on that tracker. That one tracks east and west, and did the same thing with all the other panels that are mounted on the ground. I think they'll show them in the next slide. Can we go to the next slide? There we go. These are the rest of the ground mounted systems. There I am cleaning again the panels. The one at the very far back is our solar trailer that I take around for exhibitions and for powering bands and everything, but it is also connected to the house, so it is always in use. Next slide. This is with the snow all cleared off of it. So they're actually starting to produce power, believe it or not, even though if looking at the slide there, it's completely overcast out, but they are actually producing power. And we will go through some of these numbers here towards the end of what power we're actually producing on these cloudy days. Next slide. This is what I call my solar swing. So people are asking, what is a solar swing? Do you swing on it and create electricity? No. Does the power of the panels make the swing go back and forth? No. This is a solar array setup that powers my garage, that heats and cools the garage. And I've decided to make it a multiple purpose, and I love swing, so I attach a couple of swings to it. And it is great exercise. So I call it my solar swing. It is 2,280 watts of power that it can put out, and it is tiltable seasonably. It doesn't track east or west, but we can adjust it for the different angles of the season. And you can see the ladder. That was the same ladder I used to clean the other panels with a broom, and that's what I used to clean those panels with. Next slide. And this is the house. We also took all the snow off the panels. I did the same thing similar to Paul did. I used the solar panels to hold me up there so that I wouldn't fall off. Worked my way from one end to the other and slowly got all the snow off the panel, started at the top and worked my way down and pushed it all off, which I really love. Solar panels to produce power, and you just can't do it when they're covered with snow. So That was a little bit of a chore, especially when it was like 7 or 8 degrees out in the morning. But I was able to get it done, and I was doing it safely and didn't break anything doing it, including me. Next. This is another heat source that I've used. Believe it or not, this is an old Aladdin lamp. Now, it runs off of kerosene. Unlike a regular kerosene lamp where it just has a wick and you have a flame on the end of the wick, this thing has a round wick in it, and it has a real tall chimney, and then it has a mantle like you see in a Coleman or in a Coleman lantern. And the way it works is you light the wick and it burns, and you put the top of it on, and the wick is actually drawn up with all the air of this chimney. It actually creates a blue flame, just like your gas range does. And it is so efficient that mantle lights up just like a Coleman lantern. It produces an equivalency to about 60 watt incandescent bulb, and it puts out between 2,500 and 3,000 BTUs of heat. It is absolutely silent. It makes no noise like a Coleman lantern does. There is no odor. These things are very, very efficient. They do recommend having a small window open. We had them in the bathrooms. We put one in each bathroom. And with the bathroom doors closed, with no heating or anything in the bathrooms, we were able to maintain about 78 degrees in the bathroom just using that one lantern. And it consumes about a quart of kerosene every 12 to 16 hours. So that thing is really amazing. You can look them up. It's called an Aladdin lamp. They are a little bit finicky. There's a little bit of a learning curve on how to use them, but they are truly amazing. And they're, like I say, there is no odor that comes out of them. Once you get them set and turned on, they may smell a little bit when you first blow them out. You get that kerosene smell, but the whole time they're running, there's absolutely no odor from them. So those things really, I'm really impressed with them. They're really great. So we're going to go now to our energy production. Last slide. This is all the data that I've had for February of what was going on, along with the temperatures that were outside, the highs and the lows temperature. Now we have a total of 13 kW of solar, all the different various arrays that we have, and we have a 7.5 kW wind turbine. Now, if you look, starting from about the 10th of February through the 18th of February, during that time period, it stayed below freezing the whole time. And for the most part, it was pretty overcast. If you look at the solar kW line during that time period, you can see solar wasn't producing a whole lot. Like on the 10th, 2 kW, 11th, 5 kW. On the 13th, the sun started coming out. The clouds were a little bit thinner and it picked up a little bit. But at the same time, the wind was blowing. The next line over, you can see the wind turbine was making 19, 20, 29 kWs for the day. And that would keep our batteries charged. Now, we lost grid power for 3 days. We had that was a total period of about 72 hours. And I didn't even know the grid was off the very first day until people were telling about it on the news and whatever. I went back outside and looked at my meter, and sure enough, my meter was dead. I wanted to keep the batteries at a very high level of charge because it's like, you don't know what's going to happen. You want to keep a full tank of gas. I want to keep a full set of batteries as high as I can. So I flipped my battery charger on. When I did, nothing happened. The battery charger wasn't working. The grid was down. But our batteries were still at 90, 80, 90% state of charge. 2 hours later, the battery charger came on. I could hear it. It has a fan in it. The battery charging put out a max of 60 amps at 56 volts. So it can charge a battery at a rate of about 3.3 kilowatts. But the batteries were pretty much charged up, so it didn't consume near that much power. It was drawing maybe 800 to 1,000 watts. Every 2 hours, the grid went off and on. Every 2 hours, you could do it like clockwork. I could hear when the charger came on and when the charger came off. That's how I knew the grid was off and on. And it was like clockwork, 2 hours off, 2 hours on. And when it was on, that was the only thing that we were using. It was just topping off the batteries a little bit. Actually, I really didn't need to top off the batteries, but I wanted to keep them at the highest level of charge because I didn't know how long this was going to happen. So I want to keep a full bank of batteries. So you can see by the scale here or by the chart, starting around the 19th or so, sun started coming back and it started warming up. And then after that, things started getting back to normal. We started producing 54, 55, 46 kilowatt hours a day with the solar system. Now, I did get my electric bill for the month of February. It's the highest electric bill that I've had in probably 8 or 9 years. And it was pretty shocking because not only did I get a higher electric bill, but there was a letter in there stating that we get our power, we're on a co-op, we got a lot of our power from Brazos. And they increased the rate of the power that we had to buy. Normally our rate is 9 cents a kilowatt hour. And they jumped it up to 11 cents a kilowatt hour, which is not bad at all. So when I looked at the bill, are you ready for this? My electric bill for the month of February was $47. So 15 of that is our monthly service charge. And that is the highest electric bill I've had in years. Normally, our electric bill runs anywhere from $15, which is the lowest I could possibly have because that's what our monthly service charge is. And it stays around $20, $25 a month. And we just use it to top the batteries off. So the other thing that we can do, if the sun does not shine enough or the wind does not blow enough and the grid is down, the other choice that we have is I have a backup generator. And that backup generator would now plug into that battery charger that is now currently plugged into the grid. And I could use that battery charger with the generator to top the batteries back off. So there should be no reason why I should not ever be without a power, unless of course I get completely wiped out with a tornado or something. So we should be good. And this holds true for both summer and for winter. I never want to run out of water. We have 2 water supplies. I have the well, we have rainwater. We have radiant barrier everywhere. We have our insulation around the windows or radiant barrier around the windows and the windows shaded. So in the summertime, even our solar system can run all the air conditioners, even the central unit. When the wind's blowing really good in the summer and the sun's shining, we can run 7.5 to 8 tons of air conditioning just off the solar system. Most of the time we don't need to do that. I do that to keep a bigger load on the wind turbine. I don't like to run the wind turbine without much of a load on it. Normally what happens is the wind turbine starts picking up and if we don't have enough load and the batteries are charged, the solar panels will cut back, given the wind priority to keep everything running. If there's not enough load on it, the wind turbine has a tendency to speed up and it does regulate so the batteries won't get overcharged. I don't like it to run faster. It's like driving your car. The faster you drive your car, the shorter it lasts. So I like to keep a load on it. So we do have extra loads. I can turn extra water heaters on, or I can actually turn a hot tub on and we can heat water with the hot tub. And one thing I have done, which most people would probably never think about doing, our hot tub is actually inside the house in an exercise type room. So all the water that's heated in the hot tub, when it's slowly losing heat, it radiates that heat back into the house instead of outside and having to run it. So these are all the things that we have done. Like I say, basically it was to prevent, loss of water during the droughts. but it's also proven to be very effective during winter storms and keeping us warm. The other thing that I have, which I forgot to mention, is we do also have a wood stove that does have an outside air supply. It's a freestanding stove. I had built a concrete block around it to where it does radiate into the block and heat it up. It also has a built-in fan. It's a 100 CFM fan that consumes about 33 watts of electricity when it's running. At maximum output, this wood stove can put out 89,000 BTUs, which is plenty to keep our house warm. We only run this stove when it gets extremely cold out, because if we try to run it, say if it's only 30 degrees out, we have to open up doors and windows, even keeping the stove turned down, because the house will overheat. There's some vents above the stove that is ductwork inside the wall with a fan that actually takes some of that heat and puts it upstairs into our bedroom. So it circulates throughout the house. That is our main source of heat when we kept the house without the grid. We kept the house to whatever temperature we wanted. We had no problem keeping the house at 78 degrees if we wanted with the wood stove. The propane heat, we use it on days when the heat pumps don't work too good because it gets cold out, like Paul explained. I just shut them off. The mini splits don't have backup electric elements in them. And if I need to knock the chill out of the house, we can turn on the one propane stove for 30 minutes or so that's mounted on the wall to knock the chill out of the house. And we have a 500-gallon propane tank. One thing that I did notice about propane, during the day, just before the ice storm, I noticed that we were having some air leakage around one of our doors. So I went down to get some weather stripping, and I passed by where we could normally get our propane bottles filled. Well, there was a line, everybody having propane bottles all the way around the building, around the corner, everybody outside in freezing temperatures, trying to get their propane bottles filled. Well, my solution to that is, since we have a 500-gallon tank, I had a wet line installed in it, so I can fill my smaller bottles here at the house, which is a lot cheaper because I buy propane during the summertime when the propane prices are down. And this last spring, I don't know if you remember, when there was driving restrictions and nobody was on the road, gas prices really plummeted. Well, when that happens, propane price followed gas prices. So I had propane tanks filled whenever the gas prices were at the least expensive as compared to if I would have had to done it now, which they were a lot higher. So I didn't have to wait in line, and I didn't have to pay a high price for propane, and I can fill my bottles here. So we come through this, it's kind of boring during the day when all this was happening with everything, because everything here was basically normal in the house. We had no pipes freezing. We kept a nice temperature in the house. We had our internet. We watched TV. We listened to the stereos, did everything that we normally did. And it was all because it's a battery-based hybrid system. Hybrid, it can connect to the grid. We don't have it connected to the grid, but we have multiple sources of input for power: the grid, the solar, the wind, and the backup generator. So with all that, I think we're set for life as far as energy production, other than maybe getting hit by a tornado. So any questions?
Mike, this is Rosa. Was there CO2 coming off of that Aladdin lamp?
Do I now? Say again?
On the Aladdin lamp?
Uh-huh.
Wasn't there carbon dioxide coming off of it?
There is not, well, no, not really. It's like the similar to the propane heaters that you mount inside the wall. They have, it doesn't emit CO2, it burns it somehow or another. I don't know how that works exactly, but they do have oxygen sensors on those that if your oxygen gets depleted in the house, the heaters will turn off. But there is no CO2 that I know of. I mean, we've had them in the bathroom running for several days and have never noticed any problem. You can also leave a window cracked if you want. They actually recommend that. But I have not noticed that. We do have CO2 sensors in the house, and we have smoke detectors, and none of them actually went off.
And no carbon monoxide either?
Nope,
Rosa?
not that we were able to detect.
Yes, sir. Who's that speaking?
Rosa, this is Dan. There
Hey,
will be
Dan.
carbon dioxide, but what Mike is referring to, and I'm sure the questioner intended, was the carbon monoxide or simply CO. And in this case, when you have a very complete combustion process, as this lamp apparently does, particularly given Mike's comment about the very blue flame, there will be carbon dioxide, but little, if any, carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is fatal in sufficient quantities. Carbon dioxide is not. Well, let me rephrase that, but you know what I mean.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, the floor is open for questions for Mike. Anybody else?
So can I ask a question, Mike?
Sure.
Your system runs the solar and the wind directly power the house. Now, if I understand Paul's system, the solar and the wind do not directly power the house. They only work when the grid's on because of the inverters. Is that the difference?
Yes, our system is what you might call a standalone system. Just like you would see in an off-grid cabin, the inverters are designed to run without the grid. They receive all their power from the battery, and they're not looking for a signal from the grid in order to operate.
And mine is grid connected, which is probably the most common, obviously, installation.
Yes. Yes.
That everybody else has.
Any other questions for Mike?
Oh, let me just say he mentioned his bill. My co-op, I'm on Grayson Collin Co-op. They made two enormous changes in 2020. They first allowed us to carry over any excess production hours in a month. They used to not credit us or pay us. You produced more than you use. They put unlimited rollover. And then middle of the year, they added a free nights and weekends plan. And as you can tell from all my data, I downloaded everything, ran the pivot table, and realized that I would have no more utility bills with my 3.7 kilowatt system. And I am now on month 7 of only paying the base fee of $24 a month. I have had zero charge for energy because of banking and free nights and weekends.
I'm jealous. You're doing better than I am.
With a tiny little system too.
Like, do you get any money back or any credit for your production?
No, I am not hooked up. My system is not hooked up to the grid, so I do not feed back into the grid. That was a personal choice that I made because of some of the stipulations that they wanted and I disagreed with. So I decided to do a standalone system that is not connected to the grid.
So Mike, how long will your batteries last if you have no input to them?
We estimate if we cut back and be very conservative, we could probably last about 5 or 6 days. But on the other hand, I have never, ever seen a day where there is no input. There's either a little bit of solar or a little bit of wind or the combination of both. As you can tell by the chart that you looked at, there was a lot of cloudy days. There were a lot of windy days. There were some where the clouds and winds was very little, but we were still producing power. There's always some power going into the batteries.
Thanks.
Hi, Mike. This is Lissa. I had a quick question about the solar panels and people having to clean them off. I mean, if they're on your roof, they're fixed. But if some of your standalone solar panels were trackers, do you think it would have been feasible to get them to shed the snow themselves, or does the angle just not go high enough?
The angle was not high enough. As you could see by the photos, that was the steepest angle that the panels could be set at. And the snow will stick to them. Now, I would imagine that if we had a heavier snowfall, that once the weight of the snow got on there, it may have possibly started to slide off. But we only had, about 2 or 3 inches, maybe 4 inches of snow at the most. So it stayed on the panels, even though at the angles that they were at.
Yeah, I've just seen comments about how for utility scale solar farms, they might be able to shed snow in certain circumstances. So I was just curious.
Yeah, it is possible. But they'd have to be at a pretty steep angle.
Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh.
Amy, I think you had a question earlier, either for Mike or Paul.
Actually, Paul already answered it. So
Okay.
thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Now, one of the other things I would recommend everybody doing, and I had bought one of these little rechargeable LED lights. This one, I don't know if you can see the name on it or not. I can't read it. I'm looking at it backwards. But anyway, it uses a lithium battery, and this thing puts out 1100 lumens, and it's adjustable. It's got 3 brightness setting, and you can also use it to charge your cell phone with if you have extended periods of power outage. And it'll charge back up via a wall wart. And when the power's out and everything's dark and black, lithium-ion batteries stay charged up. Unlike regular batteries where you reach for a flashlight and turn it on and the batteries are dead. These things are great. You can find them on Amazon. I would recommend everybody having 1 or 2 of these. I don't know if you ever had to go to the bathroom in the dark. It's not very easy, but just a little bit of light with one of these things can really make a huge difference.
It also helps if you have a phone, but the thing is that you have to be able to recharge your phones.
Right, this light, you can plug your phone charger into this light and will charge your phone.
If we don't have any
I
more
cooked my
questions.
dinner by,
Go
I
ahead.
cooked my dinner by sterno.
Yes, yes. One of the things I didn't cover is the multiple ways we have of cooking food. In the kitchen, we have an inductive stovetop, which is very energy efficient. And we also have a gas range that works on propane. We'll switch back and forth, use one or the other, depending on what kind of energy we have. We have real cloudy days where we use gas. Most of the time we use electricity. The other thing that we have is we have one of those what they call air fryer ovens that we use to cook pizzas and things like that, which are also very, very energy efficient. Also outside during the summertime, we do a lot of cooking outside to keep the heat out of the house. We cook on a barbecue grill, and we also have a propane stove, or not a stove, but a stove top outside that we could cook on. And we also have 2 solar ovens that we can cook on. So we have multiple ways of cooking food along with the wood burning stove. One of my favorite things to do that is we love putting baked potatoes inside that thing. And for some reason, the baked potatoes are just so much better when they're cooked inside that wood stove. I don't know why, but they're just absolutely delicious that way.
It's like everything cooked on wood, Mike.
If we don't have any more questions, what I would, first of all, let's give a great round of applause to both Mike and Paul, because we have all benefited from their fantastic information. We can't thank them enough. It's always wonderful to hear from them. And what I wanted to do as part of today, and again, if it's woven into the questions to Paul and Mike Renner, that's great. But we wanted to give our members and our guests the opportunity to tell us about some of their experiences during this power outage, because I think as you describe them, it might also trigger Mike's and Paul's brain about how to address some of those problems, or how to help yourself in that kind of a situation. Anybody want to go first? No, Dan?
Since there aren't any takers, Rosa, I'll jump in. This is Dan.
Go for it, Dan.
Take it away.
like I'm going to presume most people live in a tract home of some flavor. So do we. Our power was on and off. We had the same issues that most people did. Our internet was down for several days from the storm, and even prior to that, courtesy of the dog people. Problem that we ran into in our case is that these little covers that you put on the outside spigots aren't really rated to protect that spigot from freezing down to the temperatures that we experienced. So what I did in our case was I put one of those covers on with some fiberglass insulation stuffed inside. Then I went over that one with an even larger cover. Then I went down to the hardware store to buy some fiberglass insulation, and they were sold out. But I was able to buy a piece of what is called duct wrap, which is the same thing. And I cut that into squares and then blessed Gorilla Tape. That stuff is just absolutely tenacious. I covered the entire assembly with a large square of the duct wrap with the foil outside, and then Gorilla Taped it to the side of the house. And it protected the spigots from freezing through the entire period, even though the house was down in the low 50-degree range at times. So that was our little story as far as how we survived it. Everything else made it through okay.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else want to share their story of how they survived or what they did to protect themselves on these very cold days that we had in mid-February?
I'll interject a quick story. Like
Terrific.
a lot of people, we lost power for extended periods of time. But over the years, I've worked on making the house better insulated. So the temperature never got below, say, the mid-40s. And so that just meant we had to wear sweaters or coats around the house. And we cooked our food in the fireplace, to y'all's point, over a wood fire, and it was actually very tasty. I enjoyed doing it, and I've experienced much worse camping and hiking out in the wilderness. So it wasn't bad. There was no rain on us, no wind. It was cool, but it was comfortable. So it was kind of a fun experience for us.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else want to be a brave soul and tell us about their experience?
Rosa, this is Jimmy Hash. I'm going to try and share this screen. Just clicking on share screen shows what I've got.
No, it's your name. Ryan, do you want to have Jimmy allow him to share his screen?
Yep. Give me 1 second, Jimmy.
Yeah, we need to make.
I just have one chart to underscore what Paul had to say about the efficiency of geothermal versus air-sourced heat pumps.
Okay. I'll be able to share.
All right. Now, if I hit share screen.
Yeah, it should come up.
All right. Let's see what happens here. All right. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. This is this is an energy chart off of my solar system. The red shows the power that I'm consuming, and you can see in the coldest parts of the event, my power consumption was dramatically larger than before and after. And you can see here sunny days, and you can see here when my solar panels were covered with snow. So you compare this to the chart that Paul showed, and this is real data that shows that an air-sourced heat pump is nowhere close as efficient as a geothermal. So I wish I had one, but I was told at the time, no way, Jose, you can get one on a lot as small as I have. So that's all I have. Thank you.
And for those of you who don't know, Jimmy was a presenter for the mobile solar charger that Dallas College was gracious enough to video and edit, and that is now available to our members to view and go through that workshop if they want to create their own solar mobile charger.
Yes, we owe a great vote of thanks to Dallas College. Those
You
folks
do.
are a delight to work with, and they're very, very professional.
They are. Any other brave soul want to tell us about their experience?
Yes, I'd like
Bob?
to share one quick experience. I have a 1970s single-story house, and windows are kind of drafty. So what I ended up doing is I got some large plastic sheets and blue tape and just covered the entire window area, these bay windows and stuff. And that kept down a lot of the heat loss. So my house never got below the mid 50s. So it also kept me, gave me something to do while I was running around in a panic covering up the windows.
Thank you, Rob. Michael Swartz, you had lit up. Did you want to share?
Sure. Yeah, we actually never lost power through the whole thing. We happen to be on a trunk, electrical trunk that goes to a fire station. So I understand they didn't roll those off. But we've got a 7 kilowatt solar system with the N-phase converters like Paul has. And when the grid does go out, we've got a couple of Tesla Powerwalls version 2 that generates a microgrid so we can keep power on. But we were already doing, in case the power did go and we had stayed off for a long time, we did a lot of the preventative things that you guys did, like taping off doorways or sealing off parts of the house so we could keep the heat into the living space. The only problem that we did have was some of the outdoor spigots froze on us. And since we still had power, and I'm an astronomy guy, I used a thing called a dew zapper on telescopes to keep the dew off the lenses in the middle of the night. So it's just a little heat strip. So I wrapped that around one of the faucets, and man, that thing was toasty. And it turned out it was a faucet that was attached to my wife's sink, which was on an outside wall. And she didn't have to keep the doors open because that little heat strip just kept that thing nice. So since then I went to Amazon and bought a couple more heat strips to use on the other faucets that kept, freezing up. I'd get out there with a hairdryer and unfreeze them. Thankfully they didn't burst. Those little heat straps are great for your faucets, as long as you have some power.
Mike, can you mind?
Can you put that in the link?
I was gonna say, Michael, can you share that link on the chat, please, so that
I can
people
try and
can
do
go
that.
get them?
Yep.
Anybody else want to share their experience and what they did?
Yeah,
Michael?
I do. So as everyone probably knows, I live southeast of Dallas, about 65 miles, and I straddle a co-op, which is Trinity Valley, and Encore. But my service is Encore, and I don't have solar, and so I lost power. But I lost power for 6 days. And why that happened is because I live on Cedar Creek Lake, and our neighborhood in the city of Toole is about 50% occupied. So they're weekenders, right? And so, but everyone had all their power turned on to make sure that they weren't down here, but they had their heaters on and everything like that. So the power tried to come on like twice while we were down, but because everyone hadn't tripped their breakers, the transformers kept blowing. And so because we are in the hinterland, so to speak, Encore didn't get any crews out here until Saturday noon. I finally got my power back on at Saturday noon, but there were people, we had 2 neighborhoods, about 100 homes that were shut down. The rest of the lake was on, even Encore, but we were off. We were off through that entire period. And, it finally took, people shutting off their power. Actually Encore was out here turning people's power off to make sure that the transformers would stay on if they were not living, if they weren't out here. So the lesson learned there is that when these type of events, extended events happen, we should go in and trip our high power usage breakers like our hot water, our air conditioners or heaters and everything. And then when the power comes back on, you can go and switch them back on, but it's time phased in a way with everyone else. And so what we did to stay warm, I have a geothermal heating and air conditioning system, but guess what? Water is continuously running because we have a pump. And but when you have no electricity, that doesn't work. But because the house is so well insulated, I have a 250-gallon propane tank that's buried. And so I converted my wood fireplace to propane gas logs. We burned that propane the entire period of time. It kept the interior just warm enough to keep the chill off. It got down to about 55 degrees inside the house. And we have a propane cooktop, so we're able to cook and have coffee and things like that. We also cooked outside, with charcoal, just to enjoy being able to do that. But I am going to walk my talk because I am a solar guy, and I do plan on becoming resilient and not depending on this ever happening again going forward.
Rosa, all I was going to add is it was just good, clean living and praying that made my 123-hour frozen pipe thaw on Friday afternoon.
Wow.
There was my technique. There's nothing I could do.
Oh my
But it
God.
thawed. Hey, right?
Wow.
Oh, they turned our water off too. The city did, because we're on a municipal water district. It's not the city. And they shut down everyone's water the second day into the freeze because all their pumps froze. The water went down and it got contaminated. They couldn't treat it. And then we had to boil our water for about 10 days afterwards. So it's quite an experience.
Paul, did you want to share?
Yeah, I had, I didn't have issues because I'm almost next door to the hospitals here in Plano. So I didn't lose power, but I was wondering as this was going on and started searching YouTube, how can I take advantage of that 60 kilowatt hour battery in my car? And I saw several schemes of using the charging system so you could harvest 1.5 kilowatts perhaps, but does anyone have any experience with that or know how to utilize that?
I can tell you what I've done. I've got a Prius and I've installed a 1 kilowatt inverter in the Prius. And the way the Prius works, the 12-volt system runs off the main battery bank. And when the main battery bank starts to drop down, the engine automatically comes on to charge the main battery bank, which charges the 12-volt battery bank. So I can draw off of that inverter up to almost 1,000 watts, and the car will turn off and on as needed in order to keep the batteries charged. Of course, it's only one small line. It's only 1,000 watts, but it's enough to maybe keep a refrigerator running and do a few things that you need to do. But it's an inverter that I had just installed on the 12-volt system, and the charging system in the car kept that battery from going flat.
Yeah, I see. Well, unfortunately, in this case, my car is all electric. However, with 60 kilowatts, I can still draw from that charging system.
Right.
If I put the inverter here and since I have gas heat, I could keep my forced air heater going with the electricity out of the battery. And I will probably have at least that in place if I don't have another battery solution.
Okay.
By the time this hits again.
Now, your main traction battery in that car is a high voltage system, and they don't make any inverters that I know of that run off of that voltage, but they do make a lot of inverters that run off the 12 volts. And if your car is like mine, you also have a 12 volt system in your car
Yes.
that your charging system will keep it up. So you can still run a smaller inverter off of your 12-volt system, and your car will maintain that as long as you have it turned on off of the main traction battery.
Yes. So that's all I could harvest from that car. But I've heard that there are schemes coming to be able to utilize the high voltage batteries out of that, and that there's initiatives, for instance, in California where, you know, in disaster situations where people could plug into the grids. And I don't know anything about that yet, but I intend to find out.
Yeah, I've heard about that, but I don't know the details about it.
I know a little bit about that. Nissan has had for several years vehicle to grid technology in their electric cars operating in Japan. There are a few of those vehicles in California. In order for vehicle to grid to take off, our great state of Texas is going to have to deal with all of us power generators out here. But vehicle to grid is a real thing. It's coming in the state of New York. There is one school district that's has partnered with their energy provider, and the energy provider paid 50% of the cost of the electric bus in exchange for being able to use the bus batteries for vehicle to grid support during the summertime. So this is real technology. It's coming. I have been watching that pretty closely because I'm in the same situation. I've got 2 electric cars out there, and I'm grid tied for my solar. It makes no sense for me to be sitting in the dark with that much power sitting in the garage. So the next electric car will have vehicle to grid capability.
I have one question about that. Since it is a grid tie system and it feeds back to the grid, will it still operate if the grid is down?
Not with the inverters I had. I'm sorry. You're asking if my system will operate with the grid down. The answer is no. In order for me to get a vehicle to grid system in place, there is going to have to be some re-engineering of perhaps the inverters or perhaps the system that deals with the vehicle to grid. The biggest issue, as I understand it, is to make sure that when I am separated from the grid, I am detached from the grid so I don't electrocute the line workers.
Right. And I think that's the way the cars you're talking about over in Japan, when they're using grid tie, that if the grid goes down, the cars cannot power the grid.
That's true. In fact, during the Fukushima disaster, the people around that site were driving their cars outside the area, charging them up and driving them back to their homes to power their homes with.
Okay.
So the technology is real. It's been in place for a long time. Fukushima is what, 10 years old now?
Yeah.
You can tell how far advanced the US is.
Wow.
So Mike, I had a question. This is Dharma. I had a question for you guys. So I've heard that some people have small gen sets in an outage situation like this, based on what you just said about solar feedback to the grid. Do they treat this as a real outage, or even though it's rolling, are they not permitted from feeding any juice into your breaker box?
On mine, if I have a generator running, the only thing that generator is powering is a battery charger that charges my battery, that feeds the inverter, and my inverter is not connected to the grid.
The inverter needs to be on a disconnect so that it doesn't feed the grid. It's only feeding your dedicated circuits or your direct line to your refrigerator or whatever off that gen set.
Right. Now, originally, the way my inverter is set up, and it can still possibly work that way, the inverter does have a secondary input from the generator. If the grid goes down, the generator can kick on, but the inverter automatically disconnects from the grid, and it has a secondary output that connects to a sub panel that keeps all my essentials powered through the generator, and at the same time, the generator turns the inverter into a battery charger and recharges the batteries at the same time. Yeah, those
Jimmy,
are
Jimmy.
referenced now
Oh.
as multi-mode inverters, so that
Yeah,
you can
hybrid
take advantage.
inverters.
Yeah, hybrid inverters. Yeah,
right.
Jimmy, there's a question on the chat asking what the wattage is on the solar charger, the portable.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
There's a question on the chat box asking what the
the solar lunch
the
box?
solar lunchbox, what the wattage is on that.
The panel is
10
10
watts.
10 watts, I believe.
Is that right?
Right. And
So-
the battery, it was a 7 amp hour, what is it? The glass pad,
Yeah, AGM.
AGM. It's a small unit. You can, the controller will handle up to 120 watts, I believe. So you can swap out the solar panel for a larger panel that would give you more power, and as well as you can swap out the battery. It's just that the little, it's a little system. It's just a little demonstration thing.
Yeah. It's for recharging cell phones and things like that, but I mean, you
Right.
could enlarge it. And I mean, you can build your own larger systems. I think that's something we should maybe do as a project for NTREG, is build a, 1,000 amp hour project, maybe $500-600 with all the new technology that's out there. And if people can afford to do that, there's a lot of commercial products out there. I mean, you can go on Amazon and find something, but you're paying top dollar, especially right now. Everyone wants one of those.
If you go to the NTREG website, one of the meetings that we had several years ago, I actually built a charger suitcase unit for our group, and there's a step-by-step presentation on how that all was done, if anybody was interested in building their own and saving some money.
Yeah.
Actually, didn't we just upgrade the battery to a lithium-ion battery?
Yes, the battery was upgraded.
Right.
Right.
So maybe it's an opportunity to revisit that with the new technology. So
I think there would be high interest right now since all this happened.
Yes, there would be. Okay, we are way past our normal time. I want to thank everybody who stayed with us for as long as you did. I think this was a great presentation. And the recording will be available as soon as it gets downloaded and posted, hopefully in the next few days. Our next meeting is already set. Travis Young from Studio Momentum Architects will be talking about small houses, real costs, and again, energy efficiency. Thanks everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next month. And in the meantime, post your ideas and your experiences on the NTREG Groups IO. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Great job,
Thank you,
Paul.
Mike. Thank you, Paul.